Hey guys, how you doing? Tekking101 here. Hey, are you ready to watch a video about the NIDAI Kitetsu? Hey, yeah, that's great. I just got done filming it. This is at the end of the video, where I just remembered to put the Harry Potter book up. I moved on to Azkaban. All right, cool. Enjoy the video where I forget it for like 99% of it until the very, very end. Go to it, past me. Shut up, Barry. You know what this is right here, ladies and gentlemen? Do you know what this is? That's right. This here's a Kotetsu blade. Sandai Kitetsu, the third generation. A blade overflowing with bloodlust and demonic aura. But even this blade pales in comparison to the two blades that stand before it. The NIDAI and the Shodai Kitetsu. I have one such blade with me here. Presenting in all of its terror and splendor alike, the second generation NIDAI Kitetsu. Gotta be straight up with you here. Not what I was expecting. You know, like, you look at the Sandai Kitetsu here, and it's like, alright, it's red, it's like a dark red, like the color of blood that's been stained on the battlefield for generations. You know, that kind of crap. You know, you draw it, it's got, you know, a neat little edge there. So it's a cool looking sword. So I'm like, alright, what are the other swords gonna look like? The Shodai, the first generation, and the NIDAI, the second. Well, we get the NIDAI in Wano, and, lavender? Really? Like lavender? That's the color palette we're going with here? Honestly, like, if, you know, you walk into a nursery or something, or, you know, like a preschool, like, this would be the color palette I would imagine that would be on the walls, you know? Like, just, it puts the children at ease. But here you go, second generation NIDAI Kitetsu, a blade that is just oozing curse and bloodlust. Okay. Oh, man, you know, it's great that we finally touched upon these blades. You know, it's like, when was that? Like, back in freaking One Piece chapter, like, it was before 100, because 100 was when the Straw Hats go into the Grand Line, so it was probably, like, in the 90s when, Zoro went into Ippon Matsu's shop at Logtown, and he learned about the Kitetsu blades, and, you know, how there's 3 of them, and Zoro got his hands on the Sandai, which is just a Wazumono grade, so it's the lowest rank of Meito. Tashigi was there, and she's a sword nerd, so she's like, oh my god, you got the Sandai Kitetsu, oh my god, you're so lucky. The NIDAI Kitetsu is an Owazumono, and the Shodai Kitetsu is the Saijo Owazumono. They're so cool! You know, that's basically Tashigi, right? And then we, really don't touch upon them for, like, at all up until Wano, which is, like, 900 something chapters later, you know, like, it's insane. 800 chapters later, I guess. It's insane, right? But we're finally touching upon it. Maybe it took a little longer for Oda to get to that point in the story. Oda was really just waiting to get to Wano for a very long time, but there was so much other stuff he felt like he needed to include in the story. He was like, oh yeah, Wano, it's gonna start in 2000, like at the end of 2016. Then it was, no, it's gonna start in 2017. And it's like, couldn't get it then either. Okay, 2018, I guarantee it. And we finally got there. And honestly, one of the very first things that is touched upon as soon as Luffy gets washed ashore on Curry Beach, one of the very first things, like in the next few chapters, was we touch upon Meito ranks and we touch upon the NIDAI. And it's great because, you know, Tama's there and they go back to Hitetsu's house in Amagasa Village, and, you know, he's like, oh no, Tama, she's sick, you need to take her to get some medicine. And Luffy's like, alright, she gave me food, so I owe her one, right? And so, before he left though, you know, Luffy changed into his Wano attire, but your guy needs a sword, right? You can't be walking around Wano Kuni without a sword, and it just so happens there was a sword hanging up on Tenguyama Hitetsu's wall. Luffy's like, yeah, that looks like a pretty cool sword. In the anime, it's really, like, overly dramatic, where Luffy all of a sudden, like, he activates his observation haki and his eyes go red, and he's like, whoa! And he looks at the sword, and the sword is just, like, oozing purple energy, and then you hear this badass guitar riff. It's like, and it's like, okay, anime, I don't know why. I think the anime wants us to know this is a really significant sword. Whenever you have a badass, whenever an object appears, you know. It's like, alright, we should probably pay attention to what that sword is, right? So, I love how Luffy just straight up steals it. Don't you too? Like, he doesn't even, like, he just, ooh, a sword! And he just grabs it off somebody's wall and just like, alright, later. And then Hitetsu's like, wait, no, you can't take that. He's like, why not? It's like, well, first off, it's my property, like, I own it, so that's one thing. But beyond that, it's cursed, kid! Have you even handled a cursed blade before? He's like, no, I mostly just punch people. It's like, alright, well, whatever, you can't just handle an Owazamono grade sword like that. He just grabs the thing and just shoves it into his sash and just runs out the door. And Luffy's response to that is like, alright, well, if you're not gonna give me this sword, then give me your sword. And Hitetsu's like, no! This is also a worldly renown, so I'm not giving you these rare swords, you know? Oh man, it's like, you know what? As I'm getting more into D&D, and by the way, there'll be another D&D reference in this video coming up, bear with me here, but doesn't that just sound like, alright, so, you know, your party walks into this swordmaster's house, and, like, immediately, like, the bard is like, I grab a sword off his wall, and I start looking at it, like, why? Why would you just, okay, fine, you do that, and the swordmaster's like, why did you just steal one of my highest graded swords? You know, why did you just take it off the wall and walk out with it, right? So anyway, alright, NIDAI KITETSU, aside from the color palette, it is, you know, second generation. It was forged by a guy by the name of Kotetsu, alright? So, you see where we're going here. Kitetsu, to understand this, is, I think it is the name of the original swordsmith that created the Shodai, the first generation. This was a little ambiguous for a while. For quite some time, we were led to believe that the original swordsmith Kitetsu made all three of them. Like, he made all three, and they were, like, progressively lower in Meito each time. That's not actually what happened. Kitetsu are the name of, like, the sword school of the, you know, the groups of people over the generations, several generations that have created these blades. So, Kitetsu was the original swordsmith that created the Shodai. We don't really know anything about that guy yet. Kotetsu, written here with the kanji for ko, which is old, and then the kanji for tesu, which tesu is basically just penetrate or to cut. Kitetsu takes the kanji for oni, or demon, and so it's demon cutter or demon splitter. Demon penetrator, I guess, could also be a context for that, but we're not going to go with that because that implies a few extra things. So Kotetsu would translate out to, like, you know, old slicer or something like that. And then Hitetsu, he is flying in this sense. So flying cutter, flying slicer, something like that. Flying penetrator. I'm going to stop using the word penetrator, okay? I'm going to stop that now, alright? So Kotetsu created the NIDAI. He was a descendant of Kitetsu. We don't know how long ago he lived. And then he had some descendants. And then his descendants eventually ended in Tenguyama Hitetsu, who created the Sandai, alright? So Kitetsu, Shodai. Kotetsu, NIDAI. Hitetsu, Sandai. Alright, so we're all good on that. We're gonna, I hope, find out what's up with the Shodai. I mean, the general idea is that it's in the hands of Samurai Gandhi right now, who's a member of the Gorosei, you know, because it has a very similar scabbard, very similar guard. You know, the guard looks pretty much the exact same thing. One thing that I will bring up, though, that is something to note, it's very likely that it would be him because he's a member of the Gorosei, so having such a rare... It's a Saijo Owazamono blade is the Shodai, so that would make sense for him to have it. But it is not unheard of in the One Piece world for there to be two blades manufactured or forged by two completely different swordsmiths that look very similar to each other, okay? Perfect example of this are Enma and Ame no Habakiri. Enma was forged by Kozaburo Shimosuke, and Ame no Habakiri was forged by Tenguyama Hitetsu, revered as his masterpiece, okay? So, two completely different swordsmiths, but the blades look remarkably similar, except for their inverted color palettes. They have the same basic handle, same basic guard, scabbard. The only thing that's different is Enma is primarily black-colored scabbard and hilt, and Ame no Habakiri is primarily white for the hilt and the in the scabbard. So yeah, that's the situation there, though. They look remarkably similar. They were made by two different people. It's also possible that Hitetsu might have based Ame no Habakiri on the development of Enma, or maybe Hitetsu worked alongside Kozaburo Shimasuki. Maybe like Kozaburo was the master, maybe Hitetsu was like the apprentice. It could have been something like that, but I just wanted to bring that up because, okay, just because Samurai Gandhi has a sword that has the same basic guard doesn't necessarily mean it's the Shodai Kitetsu. Alright, so anyway, Luffy grabs this and just runs away, because, you know, and so he runs away, and he eventually runs into Zoro, and Zoro immediately, like, as soon as Luffy draws it, whenever Kaido's pirates come attacking them and stuff after they save Osuru, you know, Zoro at first just looking at it is just like, whoa, wait a second, Luffy, that sword you're holding is not just a random blade you picked up somewhere. That I'm actually feeling the vibe of like an actual ranked blade there, and it's also giving off the vibe of like a curse. You know, Zoro's been carrying around the Sandai for over 2 years, and he's kind of gotten accustomed to its curse at this point, you know, so it doesn't really bother Zoro. He just views the Sandai more of just like a problem child. You know, you could look at it like I said, like it gets progressively more bloodthirsty the higher up you go in the generations. So if like the Sandai Kitetsu is like a petulant child that's just like, you're just, you know, you're trying to cut things I don't want you to cut, I'm gonna have to rein you in. The NIDAI is a little older, you know, like a teenager, and then you get the Kitetsu, which is like a straight up murderer, you know, like, so it's really hard. I mean, the Shodai is like a straight up murderer. It's hard to rein that in, right? So yeah, it's interesting. Whenever Luffy used it, he did not cut himself, which I think and like a lot of people were worried about that. Like, whenever Luffy starts swinging this thing around, he's gonna accidentally lop his arm off, but thankfully that did not happen. He ended up slicing one of the members of the Beast Pirates, because Luffy, of course, being Luffy, he's only used a sword before, like, when he had the shadow put in him at Thriller Bark, so it's like the shadow of a sword master, so he obviously knew how to use a sword. In the anime at Marineford, I don't think this was in the manga, it might have been, when Luffy was running through the battlefield at Marineford, he got knocked down at one point, and there was like a random sword lying next to him. One of the Marine soldiers dropped. He just picked it up and he blocked another Marine soldier, and he just used it to like push him away, and then he immediately dropped it and kept running toward Ace. So he's used swords before in the past, but not very often, and whenever he did use swords at Thriller Bark, that was when he had the shadow of someone that actually knew what they were doing. This time Luffy doesn't have that, so Luffy's just like, alright, Gamu Gamu no! Sword pistol! And he just goes to punch with the sword, and it just like hits somebody's face, but then the sword blade like slices somebody else. I wonder what the sword, like, if swords have like a personality, or the curse is aware of itself, like, alright, somebody's finally using me after so long, you know, this cursed blade is finally being revealed. I don't know what the hell's up with this rubber kid swinging me around, but as long as I get to taste blood, it's all good, right? Yeah, it's just weird, because, you know, when you think of a cursed sword, what do you think of, right? You think of like a sword that's just like pitch black and covered with like spikes and skulls all over the place, right? Like the other D&D reference I was gonna make was this is the 9 Lives Stealer from 5e D&D. I mean, you look at this looks like a cursed sword, you know, like skulls at the freaking, you know, guard being like, we'll suck out your soul. But then you just get to this, and it's like, alright, whatever. So Luffy uses it, he swings it around a little bit, he eventually carries it all the way into Okabore Town, and eventually the Bakura District. Doesn't really use it all that much in his fight against Urashima. Even when the other members of the Beast Pirates show up, Luffy just kind of like, oh yeah, I have a sword, but I can fight without it. Eventually, when he gets curb stomped by Kaido, great scene, he gets curb stomped by Kaido, he gets thrown into the Udon prison, and they basically just confiscate his sword and just throw it in like an evidence locker at Udon. I'm guessing the people present did not realize the kind of level or the meto of what the sword was. They just, like, when Luffy was being processed into Udon, they just, you know, took the sword off of him, obviously, because it's a weapon. You can't have that when you're in prison. And they just like, yeah, give me your sword. whatever, and they just chuck it into an evidence locker somewhere in the prison in a vault, and I'm like, all right, you don't really know that. So eventually, when Big Mom and Chopper and Okiku and Raizo and all those, Kawamatsu gets freed, Hyo is there. When they have the uprising in the Udon prison, everyone gets freed. They neutralize Baba Nuki by feeding him one of Tama's, dango balls, and then all that happens. Kiku was able to retrieve the sword. She was able to find it and then bring it and then give it back to Hitetsu. So Hitetsu was very adamant about not letting them keep the sword. Like, even though Luffy did quite a bit for the people of the Udon prison, and he wants to help out the people of Wano, when Kiku gave him, it's like, I'm sorry that Luffy Taro took this, Hitetsu, here you go. Hitetsu was like, thank you, Okiku. Yeah, he just ran off with it. He was kind of an idiot. Hitetsu had no, intention of oh, well, he saved all of the prison, and he's gonna help us defeat Kaido, so, just let him keep it. No. Hitetsu's like, no, this is an incredibly rare sword. It's cursed. And he doesn't even know how to use it. I'm not just going to let him keep this, okay? Thank you for giving it back to me. You did the right thing. So it's currently again in the possession of Hitetsu. At this point, Hitetsu gives Enma to Zoro. He gives Ame no Haba. Well, he was going to give Ame no Habakiri to Momo, but Momo says for him to keep it for now. So that's the situation with that. The blade is, I'm guessing, still in the house of Hitetsu. He put it back where it was originally before Luffy took it. I do not know if it's going to play a role in this arc at all, as in for the actual battle with Kaido, because Zoro already has 3 swords. He's got Enma, he's got the Sandai, and he's got the Wado Ichimonji, of course. So I don't really know if Zoro's gonna, they're already, apparently they're going toward the battle already, so it's I don't think he's gonna double back to that. The only way I could see this playing another role in the arc is at the end of the battle, so this doesn't actually play a role in the battle itself. At the end of the battle, the Sandai Kitetsu gets destroyed, either when Zoro was fighting against one of the calamities like King, or Zoro maybe, imagine this. Imagine Zoro, this is kind of similar to how he fought against Mihawk back at the Baratie. So Zoro takes out the Sandai and the Enma and Wado to do an onigiri against Kaido, and he goes to slash Kaido. And what if, the Owazamono swords, they're okay. Enma and Wado, they managed to actually scar Kaido. They managed to damage him, but the Sandai shatters apart. Even when he uses Ryuo, even when he uses Haki on it, he goes to slice Kaido, and he slices him, and the Sandai just shatters when it hits Kaido's scales. So even with the Haki involved, it's just too low of a rank sword. It's only a Wazamono rank. It's the lowest of the Meito. So Enma and Owazamono are okay, because Enma has sliced Kaido before, and the Wado is the same rank as the Enma, so it makes sense they would be okay. But then this sword just gets shattered, because it's like Zoro's been carrying it around for so long. It's always been his lowest ranked sword. Even when he had Yubashiri, Yubashiri was a Ryo Wazamono. So that one was at least a grade higher than the Sandai Kitetsu. But yeah, I'm thinking if this gets destroyed, though, Zoro at least has an immediate replacement for that, alright? Where it gets destroyed, and it's kind of something similar to when he was at Thriller Bark. He takes the Sandai, and he, either buries it in Wano, or he returns it to Hitetsu, because remember, Hitetsu's the one that created this. Ame no Habakiri was Hitetsu's masterpiece, but this was still a sword I'm sure he was proud of. I'm sure a swordsmith, cares for every sword they create, even if it is cursed, it's still his creation. So I can imagine, Zoro walking back from the battlefield after Kaido's been defeated and the country's been liberated and everyone's saved. Zoro returns this to Hitetsu. I'm like, it was a good blade. It served me well in more battles than I could count. I sliced up a giraffe man with this once. I understand this is a very powerful sword. He gives it back to Hitetsu. Hitetsu's like, oh, my Sandai. I'll give it a good resting place, So Hitetsu takes that, but Zoro's like, well, I need another sword. And I can imagine Zoro, his first thought would probably not be the Nidai. His first thought would be Shusui. It would be like, well, I'm down another sword again. Thank you for letting me keep Enma, and I have my Wado, of course, but I really am going to need my Shusui back because I need 3 swords, especially since they're going to be going on their, final journey through the new world. He's going to need 3. And so I can imagine Hitetsu being like, we can't give you Shusui. I mean, it's the country's sword. We can't really give you that. But I do have another blade that is the same rank as Shusui, and it's the NIDAI. And hey, you know, I'm not really comfortable with Luffy running around with this thing, but if you were able to handle the Sandai, maybe you'll be able to handle this yet, because Zoro has yet to handle this blade yet. Zoro has yet to pick it up. He kept asking Luffy to hand it to him, and he just never did. So Zoro's yet to even hold this thing, I think. So I think, you know, Kitetsu would be like, this is the only other sword that I feel like I can give to you, because I can't let you have Shusui, because that's the country's, like, national treasure. And I can't even give you Ame no Habakiri. That belongs to Momo. I mean, I guess maybe, well, if Momo agrees to it and Momo gives Zoro Ame no Habakiri, I guess that could work, but I really want Zoro to have a Kitetsu blade. You know what I mean? Like, I want Zoro to have a cursed blade. I don't want Zoro just to be, you know, carrying around both of Odin's swords and his Wado. I want him to still have a cursed blade, and there's a cursed blade present. So I could see Kitetsu being like, alright, can't give you Ame no Habakiri, can't give you Shusui, but I can give you this. It's dangerous, but you mastered Enma, and you handled the Sandai, so I'm thinking you can handle this too. So I can imagine, like, Zoro picking it up and like, whoa, this is gonna be even more of a problem child than friggin', you know, Sandai was. And then maybe at this point we could also find out a little bit more about the lineage. Maybe at this point Kitetsu could talk about, he's like, alright, listen up. I made the Sandai Kitetsu. It was the lowest ranked out of all of the Kitetsu blades, and I understand that, okay? My ancestor, Kotetsu, he created the NIDAI, alright? But even he was a descendant of the great Kitetsu, the demon penetrator. And he was the one that created this school of swordsmithing. He was the one that had, like, the demons inside of him that originally crafted the original Shodai Kitetsu. Hey, maybe think of it like this. You ever think the reason why these things are cursed? What if the original forger, Kitetsu, was like just this, like, he was basically like a demon incarnate. Like, he was this really bloodthirsty, troubled person that just like, ha, I'll create an ultimate sword of bloodlust, right? And he, like, bled on it or something. And, like, that's part of, like, the thing. In order to make the swords, you have to make them to a certain specification, and you also have to, like, drip your own, like, bloodletting onto the sword in order to create it, and that's why they're cursed. And so when Kotetsu created his, he used, it's the same blood from Kitetsu, just diluted a little bit because it's through the generations, and then Kitetsu did the same thing, and then that's why they're all related, and then that's why they're all cursed. But the cursed gets diminished each time because the blood gets thinner and thinner, but Kitetsu is the originator, right? So maybe at that point we'll have, like, Kitetsu explaining to Zoro, like, well, I don't know where the Shodai is. The last place I heard of it was here. You know, maybe he's like, oh, the last place I heard of it was here, but I have no idea if it's still there or not. I have no idea what happened with the original blade. And then that'll set up for maybe, like, oh, Samurai Gandhi of the Gorosei has the Shodai. And then, you know, I don't know if Zoro's going to ever meet him because they're at Marijois and they're already at Wano. I don't know how that's going to work, but yeah. So, yeah, I mean, like, they set up this sword in a big way really early on in the arc. I don't think they're just going to, like, all right, well, we defeated Kaido, bye. You know, I'm feeling like Sandai is going to get destroyed during the battle, and then NIDAI is going to serve as the immediate replacement. And then eventually maybe Zoro is going to stumble upon the Shodai and then get the Shodai. That was a theory for a long time that Zoro was going to end up getting all three, because Zoro uses 3 swords. There's 3 Kitetsu blades. He was going to end up getting all 3. But of course, that would mean swapping out Wado, and that's like Zoro's main sword. He can't get rid of the Wado. I'd be very disheartened if the Wado was destroyed at one point, right? But I could see him, like, Sandai being destroyed, moving up to NIDAI. NIDAI maybe end up getting destroyed at some point, and then moving up to Shodai. But for right now, I think it's pretty clear what we're going with this, but I guess we'll see. So thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking101. I told myself like 30 times before I began filming, remember the Harry Potter book. You moved up to Azkaban. Remember the Harry Potter book. Remember the Harry Potter book. I remembered the Harry Potter book. Bye, everybody.